During this time of the year, I'm always thankful for those that are around me to celebrate the Christmas season. Those people are my family, and hopefully you're spending the Christmas season with some sort of family. Maybe that's friends, maybe it's close relatives. But during this time of the year, we would always find ourselves over at my grandparents' house in Roby, Texas, affectionately called Hi Daddy and Meemaw. Do we have any Meemaws in the room? I know we don't have any Hi Daddies. That'd be weird that we had that same close association. But we used to go to Meemaw and Hi Daddy's house all the time for Christmas, and we would basically spend a couple of times a month there at their house. And I loved going and spending time with my granddaddy and my grandmas. We would go and work the cattle out in his little farm and work on little projects. And as much as I loved every aspect of my grandparents' house, there was one thing that I absolutely dreaded, and it was their hallway. You're like, what in the world are you talking about? And so we would sit around in the living room late night on Saturday or Friday night, whatever it was, and we would watch Johnny Carson. Anyone remember Johnny Carson? All right, and so that's when it was actually good, late night TV. And I would look down the hallway, and it would just be dark. And kind of this ominous darkness, and I hated the hallway. It just freaked me out. I was just so scared of the dark, and I didn't know what was going to jump out at me. I just hated it. And so when they told us to go to bed, we ran in our room as fast as we could. And so one day, my meemaw said, what's wrong? Why are you so scared of going down there? I said, it's dark, and it freaks me out. And so we walked over to the air conditioner where the little light switch was, flipped it on, and there was light. And my little mind as a little 8-year-old, little 9-year-old was just, whoa. And it was in that moment that the darkness clouded, but the light shone, and I was at ease. I was at peace. Now, lucky for you and good for you, I'm no longer scared of the dark. That'd be kind of awkward if you have a pastor that's scared of the dark. But there are seasons and times in my own life today that the darkness is a little different. It's not like going down a hallway and going into a room and being scared because you think the boogeyman's going to come out. Well, no, it's a little different these days when the things of my soul creak back up that feel very dark. The circumstances that I find myself in or see people going through that just seem like there is no light and no way out. I've sat with parents that lost their child to suicide, doing my first funeral for this family. I've sat with mamas and daddies as they're reeling from the loss of the reality that they lost their child at 12 weeks old. I sat with middle schoolers and high schoolers on the back of my truck in Midland, Texas, as they are questioning the reality of the rest of their life because they think they got their girlfriend pregnant, that they can't overcome this drug addiction. What do I do? The darkness was as real for a middle schooler as it is for an adult. I sat with a young lady that was in a car accident coming from Dallas, Texas, back to Midland, hit an icy patch, rolled her car, and the girl died, and she blamed herself for that. Do you imagine that's some pretty dark stuff? I've sat with grown men weeping in my office because they can't get over this. I've sat with women because they feel like they're in an abusive relationship. And if those things weren't dark enough as it is, I realize the own darkness of my flesh. And as I do ministry and life with other people, it seems to be the common denominator that all of us realize there is some junk in this world and it feels very dark and sinister. And how do we find ourselves out of it? And 2,700 years ago, a gentleman by the name of Isaiah gives us a prophecy about the very same things that they were going through as a people. Darkness over the land. How do we get ourselves out of this? And it's during these moments that I'm reminded of Isaiah chapter 9, verse 2. And listen to these words of this prophet that's writing about the same things you and I feel like. The people who walked in darkness. And if you've been through any of those scenarios that I just named, or you have your own darkness and your own scenarios that I didn't even speak of, you would say, Jeff, it feels like I am in total darkness. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. And Isaiah would write a prophecy 700 years before Christ was born to a people that felt very dark. And it was in those moments 2,000 years ago that a young mama, this Virgin Mary, and a young scared out of his mind daddy, Joseph, are told by Gabriel, you're going to have a son and he will be the Son of God. You're going to call him Jesus because he's going to save many from their sins. And just as the words of Isaiah continue in 7 verse 14, he will be called Emmanuel. And so them, probably being really good Jews, remembered this passage and held it to heart. Why was this passage so important? Because what Gabriel was communicating to this people is that God was coming here, Emmanuel, God with us. Not God far away from us, not God that I could put in my pocket, but God-man Jesus, who knew our darkness, and the only way for us to experience light in the darkness is that the very light would come into the darkness and give us light. So as Mary and Joseph are making their way to Bethlehem, scared out of their minds, what they beheld before them was the very light of the world. And why was he the light of the world? Was it just simply because Jesus came to be a good teacher? Just to be a good rabbi and come give a bunch of eloquent speeches and make us feel better about ourselves, or really teach us some really good life application principles? Is that all Jesus did? No. Was it because he did a lot of miracles? Saving people from deafness, saving people from bad eyesight. Is that it? Well, no, that's not it either. In fact, those are elements of Jesus being the light. But what Jesus did, bringing the light into the world, is that through his life and his death on the cross and his resurrection, he would be and tell us that he is the light of the world. And the darkness that takes over my soul, the sin that creaks around the corner, that separates me from the love of God, Christ said, I will come and overcome that. That's why it's so important that we read in John chapter 1 that the light shines and darkness doesn't comprehend it because it's overcome by the light. And the world looks at us and thinks this whole thing is foolish. Why are you showing up to church on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever time your services are? Like, wouldn't it be better spent buying some last-minute presents and going eating the turkey and all those sort of things? But there's something peculiar about the church, that we don't celebrate Christmas because of the lights, because of gingerbread men, because of Snoopy, whatever the things are. We celebrate Christmas because we celebrate that Jesus Christ is the light of the world. And then in John chapter 8, verse 12, he says, I am the light of the world, and those who follow me will not walk in darkness. Therefore, I can have my eyes wide open and now see that life is about him and everything to him and for him. And he gives me salvation because of his death and his resurrection. I'm here to tell you that the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ is as important as talking about a baby in a manger, because Christ came into our world to live a perfect life, but to die for our sin and be resurrected.